I'm Karen Swy-zick, and you're listening to the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. This is the podcast where a bit of business and a bite of technology come together. Hi, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in to the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. And today with me, I have Kevin Peters. Kevin is a production engineer who has worked in various R&D and emerging technology roles. His experience ranges in building proof of concepts, system architecture, corporate innovation, rapid application prototyping, and new venture product launching. Kevin is also currently the CTO at AgeRate, a biotech startup focused on next-generation epigenetic technologies out of Hamilton, and a management consultant at Accenture's, and a resident entrepreneur and business mentor at the Forge Incubator at McMaster University. In his spare time, he owns and operates the small Filipino restaurant in Mississauga, Hala Hala Foods, watches anime, and plays video games. So you're quite the busy guy, eh?
I can be.
Yeah, so welcome to the show today. What I first wanted to chat about is how you got here, because I know you have a science degree, right?
Yeah, I do. So first I want to say I'm quite honored to be asked to be on your podcast and congratulations on launching. But yes, I do have a science background, although most of my career I haven't been in the whole science world. I know most people like me who initially start off in science, want to go into med school, things don't work out, and then they just diverge into like a completely different path. So yes, even though I have like a science background, I don't really consider myself like a science person per se.
In your background, would you
Consider myself like a science person per se.
In your background, would you consider it to be like more technical and like programming?
Yeah, like recently it's been a lot more like hardcore software engineering. Before, when I started my career, I was more on like the business side of it, working on light prototypes and like building things to pitch, good enough to pitch and to get executive buy-in. But now I want to get more deeper into the code and actually build things that last for hopefully months and years, as opposed to something that works for like a week or two before it has to get like rewritten.
That's pretty interesting because I don't know if you know, but I also have a science background, but I'm not really using it so much
No, I
either.
remember. I think Waterloo, right?
Yeah, like I found actually I didn't really like working in the lab. Well, just kind of backtracking a bit, for those of you, I guess, who haven't listened to the first couple episodes, I started off in chemical engineering and didn't really do well in it. It was just very like frustrated and confused of what I wanted to do, but ended up getting into science and then realized like I don't really like science either. But just decided to continue on with the degree. But I mean, you're kind of like sort of in the science space in that you're the CTO of AgeRate. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that and how that came to be?
Sure. So my old roommate, Nathan Cott, he's one of the co-founders at AgeRate. So he's 3 years younger than me, and we both took the same program at McMaster, which is biotech. And I was 3 years ahead of him. And since he was my roommate, I don't know, we would just go back and forth on like business ideas. I think our biggest like inspiration at the time was Elon Musk. And every night, like before we were going to sleep, we would just pitch each other like business ideas. We've started one company called Accelerated Sciences, and that like failed like the first time. It was interesting. It was the idea was matching in universities. They have a bunch of laboratories that they're paying rent and they don't use over the summer. But there's a lot of science entrepreneurs that want to get started over the summer. But there's a lot of science entrepreneurs that want to get started, but they don't have labs. So how do we like marry the two together? So science entrepreneurs have the equipment to use, but this like square footage that these universities are paying over the summer can be used and they can get like some money out of it from these entrepreneurs. So it's kind of like an Uber or Airbnb for like science entrepreneurs. At the time it was like quite ambitious and there was a lot of red tape. So that kind of failed. But like that kind of habit of like me and Nathan like pitching ideas back and forth, it kind of like eventually planted the seed. So a couple of years later, Nathan, Cole, and Dr. Prey started the initial like seeds of the company AgeRate. And after them kind of presenting it at McMaster and McMaster offering them to incubate them at the Forge, this kind of like little idea turned into something. And then they eventually reached out and asked me to head up the technology side. So my whole life, I thought my science degree would kind of like be useless. Mm-hmm. But if I took this opportunity as to kind of like build out all the tech within the science field, at least I know money did not go to waste in science. I've used it at least for something. So yeah, that's kind of how me and AgeRate kind of got together. It was an old roommate, an old friend who kind of reached out.
That's really interesting because, and I guess it may have to do with, your family, like your mom, she's the co-founder of Halaha Foods and from the website, if I'm not mistaken, like your dad and your brother are also part of it. So did you feel, kind of having that, like people around you who like have that entrepreneurial spirit, did that kind of also play a part?
That's an interesting question because like growing up, my mom would always be like really busy and like never at home. So I was like raised by like my Filipino grandparents. But if like in my mind, there's like two functions of like an entrepreneur. One is like more of a theoretical aspect, but like the other is like the spirit of an entrepreneur. And I think my mom is someone who is like a hardcore entrepreneur, like does not give up and like literally works like every day, like 16 hours a day. Like, and she absolutely loves it and she'll show up to the edge and take a leap of faith. I guess like my mindset has been changed around that and the people around me has influenced me to the point where, I have that support group to like launch businesses or experiment. I can take some time off from like real work to kind of like work on my passions. Like I really do feel like the people you surround yourself with does affect how you kind of like influence your direction of where you kind of want to go in life.
And what advice would you give to people, I guess, who are kind of feel like they're not really getting support from their closest friends and family? Because like we all have, our regular friends, and then we also like have our entrepreneur friends. But I guess like for those who are just kind of in the starting out phase, what advice would you give to them?
I like how you did that because there is a clear distinction between like friends and then entrepreneur friends.
Normal friends and not so normal friends.
Because so when I first jumped into entrepreneurship, like full time, it was when I left like the corporate world. I left a very cozy job and corporate world. I left a very cozy job and I just took a leap of faith. What I wasn't afraid about was failing at the business. I don't think that was hard. I don't think setting up a business was hard, getting customers, sales, like doing all the legal and all that kind of stuff. The hardest part that I realized was like 12 months in is like it's really lonely. A lot of the times like you just want to hang out with your friends and like get a cup of coffee or something and it'll be like 2 p.m. but like they're at work. So you're going to have to find like new friends. I was lucky enough that one of my friends, Sean, who's like quite entrepreneurial himself, he's working in Singapore right now at a payments company. He wanted to start like this culture and like this get together where everyone in like our immediate network who has like a entrepreneurial tendencies or has like a small business or has an idea, we would get together once a month. There were like this house party and then kind of get together right before the house party. What we would do is we would get around the circle. We would talk about things that what didn't work out, what didn't work out, what went well, and like we would set goals for each other. So the next month, like when we come to the party, we'd better had to hit our goals that we kind of like laid upon ourselves. So that helped a lot. I think the biggest thing is go to Meetup, find other like-minded friends who do entrepreneurship. And if you can't, like literally go online, go on Facebook, meetup.com, and like just hit up all these places until you find like one or two people that just like click with you and just become friends with them and just hang out with them like frequently. And now you'll have your regular friends who might not give you the support you need, or your family that might not give you support you need, but now you have your entrepreneurial family and your entrepreneurial friends that you hang out with like once or twice a month.
So I guess maybe like similar to a mastermind group.
Sure. What's a mastermind group?
Kind of like similar to what you described, you meet on a regular basis. I think usually it's a monthly and kind of, share your goals, your successes and your fails, and you kind of like brainstorm with each other. It helps keep you accountable basically. So I guess you could say like your entrepreneur friends are like the friends who keep you accountable.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
So you run both, you're part of both a biotech startup and you help run a Filipino restaurant. Do you find yourself having to use different skill sets for each, or do you find you have like a general set that you apply pretty much to every type of business you start up?
So I think when it comes to like the fundamentals of business, it could like transcend a lot of different industries and it can be applied to different industries. You're going to have like your own tool set and skill set that will definitely overlap and you can take with you wherever you go. But then where those skills don't overlap, there's like those deep domain areas that like the unknowns of what you don't know, and you would definitely need business partners who really understand the science or really understand the restaurant business to help guide you and teach you. And without those business partners there, it would be very hard to kind of like jump different industries. But a lot of it is quite transferable. Like technology, every business needs technology, communications, strategy, it all works out. But without these key business partners who truly understand the business at a core and deep level, you need those people to kind of like rub off on you and kind of hold your hand along the way to show you how things are done.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that every business needs to have technology. Like, what specific technology are you referring to, or a whole bunch of different technologies?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. So you mentioned in your response that every business needs to have technology, and technology can be pretty broad. So are there any specific like types of technology that come to mind that every business should put in place?
So I mean, yeah, so that is a very broad question. But and this comes into like a very philosophical thing of like how much of the business you want to be hands-on and what can be essentially automated. With automation comes the benefits of being able to gather a lot of data and find new insights from your products and services, as well as bringing things that are easily repeatable to a process where technology does it and no mistakes can come out of that. You get the benefit of consistency. The flip side is you might be detached about certain parts of your business now. And when errors occur or issues occur, you might not have that knowledge or skill set to kind of like fix it. You're now like detached from like that side of your business.
Mm-hmm.
But some key tools that like businesses should have and software is like honestly like literally using Facebook and Instagram for like run your ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plugging that into your operations, because if marketing and ops aren't like step in stone, you might amazing campaign and then all of a sudden your operations won't be able to handle that because there's a communication gap between manufacturing and your marketing. But for most businesses and like entrepreneurs who are just starting out, platforms that allow you to sell and get your product out there important. Like Shopify is like a huge technology that we use. And we leverage their APIs to talk to our inventory systems. Facebook, Instagram, definitely podcasting like this. So it doesn't have to be software that you make or purchase yourself. It could be software and platforms that are already out there that you can leverage, kind of like what you use for your podcast right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, actually, it's kind of funny. Prior to we started recording, Kevin was asking me about, using the F word and stuff, and I had mentioned that I'm trying to keep this episode clean. But I actually wanted to touch base on the other F word that you and your friend had failed, and I'm just wondering to you because I feel the words failure and the word success, they mean different things to different people. So, what would you consider to be like your biggest failure, if you don't mind sharing, and what do you consider to be like a success?
Okay, my biggest failure.
If you don't mind.
No, I'm just trying to think like what could it be? Maybe I can list a bunch of failures and then
Sure.
we'll let you guys decide like what my biggest failure was. So definitely starting accelerated sciences, it didn't work out. And I think that was more of a timing thing. We were in university, definitely studying, grades come first, finding a job comes first before this kind of like ambitious idea. The fact that we didn't really put a lot of effort into it, we probably put in like a grand, bought a Shopify store and then really didn't put in any effort after that. So it's like if you don't keep fueling it, it won't really work out for it after that. So it's like if you don't keep fueling it, it won't really work out. Another thing I did was what else? So I tried to start a kombucha company last summer and I bought all the equipment. I made like 4 or 5 batches of 20 different types of kombuchas and I passed it out and my kombucha tasted amazing. Okay. But after selling the first like 3 jars, I realized the profit margin was like horrible. I think it came up to like 40% and I was selling it for $4. So if you do the
Oh,
math, that's like $1.60 or
yeah.
something like that. So with all the equipment I bought, which is around like $500 or $600 plus advertising, it would take a long time for me to like pay it off. And it was a lot of work, right? And then the thing with kombucha is like if you're not always on top of it, the bacteria could grow like immensely, and then you can get issues like immensely, and then you can get issues with your ops, and things get really dirty. And yeah, it was a pain. So there was that. Maybe I might bring it back. It was called Buchaberry. Another one that I was thinking, oh, there was a company called Quick Beverage Company, where what I wanted to do at Hollow Hollow was kind of leverage the Uber platform and kind of make open up more ghost restaurants on Uber that
Mm-hmm.
would feed into Hollow Hollow. So Hollow Hollow, we have a fridge of like drinks, right? So I was thinking maybe that I could actually no, this was kind of like more of a success. We just didn't keep on going with it. So what we would do is we'd opened another Uber restaurants location, using the same location as Hollow Hollow, but just selling drinks, and we would sell it in bulk. And I would just like do ads to like kids who are playing soccer and parents who have like kids who are playing soccer when it was a really hot day, so they can buy drinks in bulk. And that kind of like a couple of grand. It wasn't anything exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then now it's kind of like a stale business on Uber Eats. Like if you go look it up on now, you can like I don't think you can buy anything off of it. I'm sure I have a lot more, and if I think of it, I'll let you know. But yes, in terms of business failures, I think there's definitely that.
All right. So on the side of success, actually kind of going back to like failure. So you've had a series of failures. So, and I'm guessing this is different for everybody. Like at what point do you like throw in the towel and decide to move on versus, oh, okay, I just need to kind of give this another kick in the pants and I'll get it rolling.
Mm, I think it's hard to like ever know, but sometimes you might do know. So before I start like any project or like another business venture, I kind of set a cap either financially or like from a time basis. So with Hollow Hollow, I think put in like $30,000 into the restaurant, and that was kind of like the initial seed funding. So if we burnt the 30,000 without becoming profitable, then like that was it. We would not continue the restaurant anymore, and we would probably have to sell it. But every project or every business idea, like I would set like a financial cap and a time cap. So like I'm not kind of like burning my wheels, losing resources when my skills and time could be put into like another idea that would probably work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good idea because then it kind of gives you something to like work towards you and realize, okay, if you don't hit this target, financially or by this time, then okay, it's time to move on. Actually, that's really good because rather than you kind of being wishy-washy, like, oh, maybe in like 5 years or maybe in 10 years, like, nope, like this particular date, it's got to happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like hard goals. It could be like moving goals. So let's say, like sell 1,000 items, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
hit that goal. My next goal could be increased. Like now I want to sell like 1,500 like items. So as you hit your goals and like your mini target to your next goal, you could like kind of adapt and change your goals. So you're always like stretching.
Mm-hmm. So moving on, talking about like goals and successes, what do you consider to be successes? Like everyone's already knows about the traditional success, like, oh, I'm able to work in Bali all the time, or I'm able to, afford these like fancy cars. But for you, like, what do you consider to be a success?
Hmm. So if you asked me this question like back when I was at university, I think it's like if you're making a lot of money and you're balling, like you're super successful. But after like working for a couple of years, I realized like there's only so much you can work and so much money you can make where it's like you kind of lose that, like it becomes a diminishing return, and now you're just like losing your soul. So I think like at this point of my life, like when you're successful, it's like when you're happy and you're working on something that kind of makes you financially stable, and you can
Hmm.
just and if you hit that like financially stable mark and you're just doing that one thing you love, it doesn't matter how much like money like you're making, as long as you're working on something that kind of like intrigues you and you can spend hours and late nights like working on it because like you deeply enjoy it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like I remember finding myself there's some days where I felt tired, but then when I started to work on something I really enjoyed doing, I would look at the time, like hours would pass and I'd be like, oh my God, it's already like 2 a.m., but I'm still, plugging away at this one thing. Whereas say if it was something I wasn't really interested in, I'd be like, oh my God, only half an hour passed and I'm still
Only
plugging
10
away.
minutes Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of the listeners are probably curious. A lot of the listeners are probably curious. We've been dropping and talking about halo halo for a while. And for those of you who don't know, halo halo is it means mix in Filipino. And I think I don't know. You can disagree with me on how to describe it, but to me, I would consider it to be like the Filipino version of bubble tea.
Oh, sweet. Okay,
I,
cool. Yeah, that is interesting.
does
I
that
mean,
make sense? I don't know.
no, it does make sense, but like it's like if you're approaching um people who've never experienced Filipino food and you kind of want to show them or relate to what type of dish this is, I think the first like mental thing, it's like, oh, you can think of it as bubble tea or like a milkshake, but like a Filipino version.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, kind of moving off to the side, like talking about like the idea of hollow and of course, our backgrounds like we're Filipino and you're half Filipino. Did you feel given the timing, like I felt when I was growing up, Filipino food, it really wasn't a thing. Nobody knew about it or there wasn't as much interest compared to, like Japanese food, Chinese food or Thai food. Like did you feel the launch of Halo when it was launched? Was it kind of like timely given the fact, there are a lot of Filipino food business now, and especially in the Mississauga area, like they have the Seafood City and a lot of Filipino restaurants.
I think it was very timely. I don't think if we launched the restaurant in a different type of food category, I don't think it would have been as successful as it was or as it is now because of it. The fact that if you look at the Filipino community in Mississauga and the GTA and the types of restaurants and food businesses are available, there's probably 1% that, they're like 1 or 5% that are like they're on the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest, they were all immigrants, like my mom, who came to Canada, and like one of the main skill sets they knew was like to cook. So it was just natural for them to open up businesses. But as like was like to cook, so it was just natural for them to open up businesses. But as like their kids are like growing older, their kids won't be taking on the business. So this generation of Filipino business owners, they're kind of retiring off, and it's up to the kids to kind of continue that. But because there's not a lot of kids kind of like taking on the reins of the business, it was really easy for us to kind of come in and blow up the marketing and then just swarm like Mississauga and the GTA about Halo Halo and like the Filipino food cuisine. Um, I think if it wasn't for that timing, Halo Halo's brand and I guess our customer base wouldn't have been as big because of it. And I think it's also the Filipino culture. We're very like tight knit, and when one business opens, it's just natural that everyone will come and support and kind of like share upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as I told like my like order for our next party.
Oh, sweet. But yeah, if you look it up Google Trends in the GTA for Halo Halo, there was a huge spike when we started opening. Like my mom is like the Halo Halo like godmother of like Saga.
That's amazing. So speaking of really cool ideas, is it possible to know right off the bat if an idea is good or potentially good or bad before executing? Because I feel sometimes it can go either way. Like if a lot of people tell you it's a good idea, it means like you're onto something. But there's also that school of thought. If people think it's a stupid idea, sometimes it could actually be like a really good idea that can potentially take off.
Yeah. So like bad ideas can be good ideas, and some good ideas are like mirage as bad ideas. But
Mm-hmm.
bad ideas are also bad ideas. So it's kind of hard to say. Like the best thing you could do is kind of if there's a problem that a lot of people have and you have an observation and you just kind of like test the waters and you make a little temporary solution, and then you just reach out to these people and be like, what do you think? What do you think? Right? If you start getting traction from there and a lot of people can see the value from there, maybe it's time to launch like a prototype to kind of widen that pool of testing that you're doing. And then so it's like you never launch like a full-on product right away. You
Right.
always kind of launch like a little prototype, do a little testing here and there. But it's hard. Like a successful idea could be successful and you do it and you execute, but you realize, maybe a year, 12, 16 months down, that if you launch it a different way, it would have been even more successful.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, prototyping is really important. And the only way you'll know if a idea is good or bad is to do little experiments here and there.
So, one of your roles that I had mentioned is that you're also a business mentor at the Forge Incubator at McMaster University. Could you describe what your role is in more detail?
Sure. So I'm actually here right now.
University. Could you describe what your role is in more detail?
Sure. So I'm actually here right now. So the Forge is McMaster's incubator. They just launched, I believe, like 3 to 5 years ago. And I wish the Forge was available when I was at university because I don't think I would have gotten like a full-time job after university. I think I would have just gotten to full entrepreneurship right after. AgeRate is actually incubated at the Forge. It's located at McMaster Innovation Park. And while I'm here from, a couple days a week, I'll be working on AgeRate, but I'll also set time aside to mentor and guide some of the other startups here. There's a food startup that I can definitely relate to as he's kind of starting out. It's called Prep Fresh. So what he's doing is there's a lot of university students who are too busy to kind of cook, especially around exam time. So he takes in a bunch of orders and creates food in bulk for them. And he uses like an online platform. There's a bunch of other business here that mainly it could be either around science or food or whatever, but technology is kind of a core component of that. And I would come in and not only give business advice, but more on like a low level architecture advice on how to structure your code. So that's kind of what I do here. I kind of sit with the other businesses and kind of like advise them on how to build software correctly.
I'm just wondering about the food startup. Would they also cater to people who are not in university but feel too busy to cook?
I feel, yeah, like I'll actually reach out to him after this and then ask him. But yeah, he's a super cool kid. And I like money is money. I'm sure he'll he'll happily to take anyone who wants to pay.
Yeah, this kind of segues into my next question because I had mentioned in an earlier podcast episode with somebody that I always felt I've never liked cooking, and I've always felt it to be such a huge time suck. And then like even now when cooking, and I've always felt it to be such a huge time suck. And then like even now when I have several things on the go, I'm cooking or just the idea of meal prep and cooking always gets put to the back burner. And you yourself, you juggle like a lot of things, being the CTO at AgeRate and then being business mentor at the Forge Incubator. And of course, as I mentioned, in your spare time, help operate Hello Hello, and you watch anime, you play video games. Like, where do you fit all of that? And
So
do you
your
cook?
oh, do I cook? So I haven't cooked in a while, and it's probably a bad thing. One from a financial standpoint, but mainly two for like health wise, because like it's so easy to like go on Uber Eats and just buy whatever. So I haven't cooked like a proper meal in a while, and I haven't done like meal prepping in a while. As for fitting things into my schedule, I don't know. Like sometimes I'll just grind like 2 or 3 days on like one thing, and then the next day I'll just take the day off and or like just binge Netflix. And then the next day I'll work on like another thing for like 2 days straight and then do that rotation. Yeah, it's not like the one of the hardest things in software, but also in business is it's so easy to do like 10 different things at once, but now you're doing 10 different things not as good where you can just focus on one thing, get it done, and then move on to the next. It's better to work on 10 things one at a time than 10 things at once. So the way I kind of split up my time and like my mental context is like having 2 days a week focusing just on this one thing or one business, take a day off, spend like a day or two working on something else, like a completely different business. So like my mind's not jumping around, keeping track of all these variables. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Just like dedicating, certain days for certain businesses if you have multiple businesses.
Yeah, Elon Musk does it like all the time. He'll like be on Tesla for 2 days a week and then he'll work on space off from those two businesses and like work on like another one and then we'll rotate back into it.
All right. So before we sign off, could you let the listeners know a little bit more about AgeRate?
So AgeRate is like I mentioned earlier, a biotech company at McMaster. Um, and what the company does is that we focus on the science around the aging process within biological systems. My roommate Nathan, Cole Krishner, and Dr. Pare, when they initially started the research of the findings that essentially became the seed of AgeRate, they came up with a novel DNA technology, sequencing technology that can predict how fast or how slow you're aging by looking at the epigenome. So the difference for those of you who don't know between the genome and epigenome is the genome is kind of like the hardware of the body. You were born with it. It's there. It kind of never changes. And like what you're given. However, it's nature versus nurture. Your environment can affect how your genes are expressed. However, there's something called the epigenome. And like I said, how the genome is hardware, the epigenome is kind of like the software that sits on top of your genome. The epigenome you can kind of think of it as switches that turns your genes, the current genes that you have on or off. And those are things that are currently being researched and can be changed over your lifetime. So these are the things that we're looking at when we're doing the AgeRate test. And because of that, we are able to accurately predict how fast or how slow someone is aging when they do the test. So for example, I was born May 20th, 1993, and I'm 26 years old, but based off my eating habits and my health, we're able to look at the epigenome and it could turn out like I'm 30 years old or actually 25 years old. So everyone has two ages. There's chronological age and biological age. So your chronological age is the age based off your time. So May 1993, so I'm 26. But your biological age is taking that genome, running some numbers, and outputting the actual age that your body feels and thinks it is. So currently on the market right now, there's a few tests that does it. However, we've created a test that is almost several times more accurate than what's on the market, but we were also able to bring the price down to about $5. So like the long-term vision and goal for us at AgeRate is that when people go to the doctors to do like a basic checkup, when they do their heart rate test or blood test, like hopefully they can do their AgeRate test as well. So that's kind of the whole vision of AgeRate as it is right now with our first product.
That's really interesting. I can foresee in the future, people, in addition to asking, how old like someone is, they could, potentially also ask, oh, what's your biological age as well?
Yeah, it could definitely be interesting now. People carrying around two ages.
But you also have something happening at the Forge. Could you also share that with us?
Sure. So the Forge is always looking for new businesses to incubate here. If you are an entrepreneur and you're looking to start your own business, the Forge is here to help with funding, help you learn how to pitch, give you access to mentors like myself and top STEM investors within, I guess, like the Canadian horseshoe. So yeah, we're always looking for potential startups to come in. So if you have a STEM startup that you would like to start and you are interested in being incubated and being surrounded with like other like-minded people and get the resources to kind of launch your business, definitely reach out. I'm sure Karen is going to put my details in the description. So don't hesitate to reach out. If you have an idea, pitch it to me to kind of validate it before we actually go through like a whole application. But let me know and I'll connect you to the director at the Forge here.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Kevin, for being on the show today.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm always humbled. Congratulations again on your podcast.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening, and stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Bacon Bits and Bytes podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe, leave a review on iTunes, and share this podcast with your family and friends. You can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Bacon Bits and Bytes. And on Twitter, it's BaconBits_Bytes. Ciao for now.